All right, all right. Welcome to another episode of Talking with Kevin and Son. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Our featured sponsor today is The Burrow, located at 149 East Lancaster Avenue in Downingtown, PA. The Burrow is a two-level split bar and restaurant offering a multitude of purpose experience with a lower level featuring casual sports bar vibe and upstairs aiming for more high-end night with your perfect guest. Enjoy a night out with your friends and family. Say hello to owner TJ and Keith. And matter of fact, you get a chance to go around. My old co-host, or my son, he's the executive chef, Theo McLemore, the original co-host of Talking with Kevin and Son. Talking with Kevin and Son, the show is where we uncover the secrets from the people you should know. Hi, my name is Kevin McLemore, four-time award-winning author, master-level fitness professional, mentor and coach, and what some say, my friends, mindset messenger. Our mission is to give power to our voice, inspire short stories, experience, and perspectives using the framework of teaching and learning. Our purpose is very simple, folks, is to help other people every single day. Today, we will be talking and sharing the story with my good friend Vinny from Canada. He is a nationally recognized bilingual keynote speaker and leader with over 30 years of experience in the law enforcement space, leadership, and recruitment. Former OPP officer, undercover operative, K9 specialist or handler, and a senior recruiter. He has partnered with his partner, Cash, we'll talk about that, for more than 1,100 calls and 400 plus drug seizures, known for recognizing and recruitment and inspiring the next level. My guest, Vynny Hicks, has delivered more than 200 plus presentations nationwide. He has earned a Commissioner's Golden Coin for Fitness and Excellence, received Eric Nedston, I think I said that right, award from the Commissioner and commendations for investigation excellence. Inspires audience to lead with their authentic and courage and purpose. Our guest is a superstar. And so let me welcome to the show my good friend, Mr. Vynny Hicks.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Kevin. I'm humbled. We've just begun and I'm already blushing. That was very kind
Vinny,
words. Thank you.
Vinny, you are a gift. It's been a long time coming. We've been trying to have this conversation since the beginning of summer. And like I said to my listening audience, Vinny's coming all the way from Canada. And we know here in the United States, there's a conversation that's not very comfortable for Canadians or US citizens. Some of my good friends, a lot of my good friends are Canadians, and I love them. They're here on the street, the conversation is very positive, but something's going on between people that are above my pay grade. I don't know what that is, but we'll talk about it. Vinny, but anyway, enough about that. I want to welcome you. It looks like it's sunshiny back where you are. We've got 82 degrees here in Pennsylvania. So how's life over in Canada?
Beautiful. Here today, I'm in Celsius, so we're at 23 degrees Celsius, which is a nice warm day. It's sunny. It's going to be a great day. I'm looking forward to going for a nice walk this afternoon. Retirement's been great, so I am loving life. I can't complain. I'm very grateful for every day and everything I've got.
All right, I'm glad to hear that. Now, some of my friends may wonder why, Kevin McLemore is talking to a law enforcement officer, but Kevin McLemore is talking to a friend that just happens to be one of a very prolific speaker, motivator, influence, and he is probably the poster child for resilience. There is a huge difference from our earlier conversations of how law enforcement or expectations of becoming a law enforcement officer, Mountie in Canada than it is here in the day-to-day lives of our police officer or civil servants here. Can you explain to me or to our audience, I already know the answer, what you have to go through and what's the requirements of, let's go back to your service in public service. What are the requirements in order to become the entry level version of Vynny Hicks as a law enforcement officer?
Well, that's a great question. And before I answer it, I want to pay tribute to law enforcement women and men across both our nations because the job they do is not easy. And I can speak from experience to that. I know that sometimes the negativity is all that gets talked about and that gets highlighted. People forget about the 99% of great calls for service that get handled by qualified people that are good communicators, that have empathy. So I tilt my hat to all law enforcement. I know it's not an easy job. I don't know what the process is like in the United States. I've only been involved with law enforcement in the States once when I went to the Canine Olympics in Indiana. Met tons of great canine handlers from around the world. It was an awesome experience. But here in Canada, just even to get through the door. So for us, a grade 12 education, which would be a high school education, is the bare minimum to be eligible to apply. Now, that being said, and I just happen to know this stuff because when I was a senior recruiter, I would attend colleges and universities and pitch this. I would basically go and talk to the next generation, the young minds, and try to influence them and to show them that law enforcement is an amazing career and it could give you a great life. So, grade 12 education, just to even apply, but I could tell you that probably 99% of the people that apply have some type of post-secondary education, whether that's college, university, military background, some type of specialty or trade, but something post-secondary. That'll get you to apply, to qualify to apply. Obviously, there's the usual, you have to be at least 18 years of age. I've never seen an 18-year-old get hired. Over here, I think the average age when I was a recruiter was between, I'd say 21 years old and 26 seemed to be the window. But that's as far as the education piece. But then before you even get an interview, we have our fitness test. And the fitness test is probably different than some of the fitness testing that you do in the United States, just like it's different than some of the other police departments within Canada, even. I know the RCMP uses a test called PAR or PAIR, which is a task-based type test. And we do something similar. But you have to pass our fitness test, which includes the shuttle run, which is a beep test. It's been referred to, but it's a back and forth and it gets faster with time. You have to reach a certain level on that just to even get an interview. So once you apply, background checks are done to make sure you're not wanted, you don't have pending charges, stuff like that. You can pass the fitness test. You need to go through all that before you even get to sit down with a recruiter. Now, once you've passed all that and you sit down with the recruiter, the interview process, which we have, I love the way it is because it's a one-on-one. It's a very hands-on and I say almost an intimate process where we talk to a candidate and it's really, I want to know what makes you tick. Everybody can look good on paper and you can write things, but now I want to talk to you and I want to hear why it is that you want to be a police officer. What do you bring to the table? What have you done to prepare? Really, where does that desire come from? What do you think policing is going to be like? What do you think of working night shifts? Is everything you're saying and your desire based on what you see on TV, or is it from something you've lived, or maybe there's law enforcement in your family? So it's a very intimate talk. Once that's done, everything gets handed to different hands. So not one person gets to see the whole file and make a decision. The person that assessed the file, that was their piece. The person that tested you for your fitness, that was their piece. The recruiter that does the interview, that's their piece. Now there'll be a background investigator who are all retired OPP officers will take that file and go investigate you. They'll leave no stone unturned. They're very good at what they do. They'll go talk to your old employers, talk to your school teachers, talk to your neighbors. They will go and check everything out. They'll fact check, in a sense, what you said in your interview to make sure the two match. Because somebody could say in an interview, oh, yeah, this, and this. Okay. But we go fact checked everything. While that's being done, there's also psychological testing. We have a whole department for psych testing. These aren't police officers. These are psychologists and people that are specialized in that field that do their assessment. This is then reviewed by somebody of higher rank that looks at every part and then they decide, okay, this should move forward. This then goes to a final review board where a panel of our leaders would look at it. So it's really in a nutshell, I don't want to go into too much detail. It's a pretty detailed and long process with a lot of different steps, with a lot of different sets of eyes involved in the process to make sure that one, we don't miss out on a great candidate, and two, that we don't miss something and somebody slips through the cracks that maybe shouldn't be wearing a uniform. Does that kind of I think I went on a bit
Yeah,
of a bunny trail there, but
that does, because most of the time the friends I have here that are in law enforcement here in the United States, most of them are legacy um, officers, servants. And I didn't know if you're part of a family tree of people that served the community, but I want to thank you for your service for one, and I want to thank the law enforcement men and women here in the United States. Like Vinny said, that 99% of them, I believe that they honor the badge and the law. And I want to thank you for your services at the same time.
oh, thank you.
Vinny, let me ask you one question. All right. You're married, and this is a little personal. You can have the option to share this or not share this. If Carrie would say, that's your wife, would say there's one thing that she knows about you that no one else knows, what would Carrie show or say if she were to answer that question for you?
One thing that she knows about me that nobody else would know. Geez,
Mhm.
I don't know if I can tell you because she knows my deepest, darkest secrets.
Well, or
Uh,
something that you may want to show, because some of us have hobbies we're afraid to show other people. I love baking, but I'm not telling anyone that I can cook.
Well, one thing I love sitting by a fire. I love fire. I love burning wood. I grew up in Northern Ontario, in a rural area. I did not grow up in a city. So I love sitting down, burning wood, and enjoying a glass of wine. I love that more than the average person does. If I could do that every night, I would. And it's something that probably a lot of people would never think. Like, one, some people are surprised that I drink. I do drink a lot of non-alcohol products. I've discovered in the last couple of years non-alcohol wine and beers. And for me, it's not so much about the alcohol of it, but I enjoy the taste of wine. There's something about sipping on some wine by a fire. And I'll do that in the winter even. The one we had a place up north in Huntsville area, just a little north of here, a couple of years ago, and there was a couple outdoor fire pits. And I would go, it could be March, beautiful day, put some wood, light a fire. There's something about the smell, the crackling. So that's something that I would enjoy that probably not many people would know.
All right. Well, that sounds fine. I know that the last time years ago, first time I was in Canada, I got hooked on ice wine. So I enjoy a fire. Matter of fact, if you ask my friends, I know how to build one heck of a fire. It starts out as a towering inferno, but it burns down to a night perfectly designed fire for
No.
friends and family. I don't know if you know anything about ice wine, but I'll come up there and we'll sit by the fire in the cold and we'll sip and we'll have some great conversations.
Oh, that sounds like a plan. I do. Ice wine is a nice thing to sip, and I like it in the winter even,
So do I.
because you have it nice and cold. So the idea of that by the fire, great idea. I'll take you up on that any day.
All right. Well, let me turn to all the questions that our listeners are going through, with the small talk. I want to find out the defining moment that changed the direction of your life that led you to speaking and continuing your leadership.
Well, thanks for asking that, Kevin. That's an awesome question. I just wrote a book chapter in a book that I'm co-writing about that. It's a story that a lot of people didn't know about me, even in my friend circle. A story that I only started sharing in the last few years. Some of my close friends knew this about me. But the moment that really changed my life, and I'm going to put this in a nutshell without going into too much detail. I left home at 15 years of age with 3 bags of clothes. I was homeless. I was a troubled kid that bounced from job to job, quit high school. Um, I really struggled. And at the tender age of 18, I became a father and lost my newborn son, buried him with my own 2 hands. Uh, and that was my changing moment. That's the moment where my whole world changed. And if you can imagine a cemetery, by now I'm working in a mine. I'm renting a trailer in a trailer park. I've got a secondhand little car, so I've done some good with my life. And the mother of Adam and her family, when they were done at the funeral or the ceremony for the burial, when they all left, it was just me left, and I went up to Adam's site. I was shocked by how small the hole was. You see funerals on TV, and I've been to funerals, and it's always a big casket. You never see a small little casket in a small hole. And I can still see that hole today. And I remember how it caught me off guard, and I was just kind of shocked. And a gentleman approached me, and I recognized him as a city worker. And he was like, Mr. Hick, are you going to be very long? Because that gentleman has to leave by 4. And he pointed at a man just down the road a bit, sitting in a backhoe. And I guess it's a city employee because they do the burial with the tractor. And I was like, "Ooh, that tractor is going to bury. You know what? Send that man home. I'll do this myself. I see there's a shovel right there." And the gentleman was like, "No, no, this is just for ceremonial purposes." I said, "Listen," and I must have said it in a way that has some conviction because I said, "Sir, send that man home. I need to do this." And they both left. The tractor stopped, and those two gentlemen left. And I don't know how long I stood there, but I remember rolling up my sleeves, loosening my tie, and I started to bury Adam. And with every shovel full of sand went in a few of my tears. And I got angry. I got mad at first. I thought I could just hear what people are going to say about me now. There's that loser kid, and he even lost his son because I had been labeled the loser kid in town. I was that kid. Every family's got one. Never going to amount to anything. And I could just hear what people would say, and I got angry about that. And then I got filled with this inspiration and motivation like a fire. And I thought, you know what? It ends now. I'm going to show everybody what I'm made of. I'm going to show everybody I'm not a loser. I'm going to live a life that my son would be proud of. This all ends today. My life is going to change. I'm going to make something of myself. I was on fire. Long and short of that is when I got back home, I reached out to a paramedic that I had met. She was part of the neonatal team that had picked up Adam at the hospital to fly him to Sick Kids Hospital, which is where he passed away. He passed away in her arms. I reached out to her because she had told me when she left, don't let this be the end of you. Do something with your life, Vinny. And I never forgot that. So I managed to get a hold of her. Now you got to remember, this is before internet and cell phones. So I had to track her down. I knew she was a paramedic and that she worked through Sick Kids Hospital. And when I tracked her down, I eventually got to talk to her and I explained to her what happened, my moment at the cemetery. And I said, I want to do what you do. I want to help save lives. I want to become a paramedic. And she was like, well, Vinny, you quit high school in grade 10. You got a long, hard road ahead of you. You're going to have to do upgrading. You're going to, I was like, yep, okay. And we wrote out a plan. And I was still working full time in the mine, but at night I would go to the local college and do upgrading classes to get my grade 12 equivalency. I'd never get a high school certificate, but I could get the equivalency of. But I also needed biology and chemistry, so I took some correspondence courses through the Independent Learning Center. Again, this is before the internet, so they would mail me the lessons. I'd do the lessons, mail them back. And it took me about a year to get all this done. And to get into college in the paramedic program, because I was older now and I had a grade 12 equivalency, I didn't have an actual diploma, I was going to be accepted as a mature student. And the final stage for that acceptance process is I had to write an essay. And so I wrote an essay on grief and I titled it Tears in the Sand. And it was a story of how I buried Adam and I had a moment there that was going to change my life. And about 2 weeks later, I got called in by the dean of the college and I thought, oh, this is going to be good news. I got accepted. And he looked at me seriously and he said, did you plagiarize this? Is this from a book? Is this from a movie? And I got angry again. I said, no. I go, I've lived every word of that. I will bring you to the tombstone and show it to you. And again, I must have spoke with great conviction because he believed me and I did get accepted. I went to Cambrian College in Sudbury, an advanced paramedic program, graduated valedictorian of my class, worked 3 years on land ambulance, 2 years as a flight paramedic. And that's when I started playing hockey with a bunch of OPP officers from the Ontario Provincial Police. And they were telling me, Vinny, we're looking for bilingual officers. And with your background, this would be a great fit. You should apply. A year later, I was walking through the doors at the police academy. And 30 years later, I just retired this past May. I've had this amazing life all because of that moment. That was the moment where Vynny Hicks' story changed, and whatever the ending was going to be was rewritten.
Wow, that sounded better than a blockbuster featured film. Very impressive. And again, I know that you've written a book on grief, and I've had a couple of people on here to talk about the conversations about losing someone. And I will tell you that if you ever need to talk, I'm not going to say that, I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm saying if you ever need to talk, I'm part of that fraternity, sorority, where my godson was taken unexpectedly at 11 years old. But I will be open to have a conversation. I'll be there for you. And I know that someone in our listening arena is someone sharing the same thing. And I always say the best thing you can tell someone is that I'll be there for you. So thank you for sharing
I appreciate that,
that
Kevin. Thank
with,
you.
with me. Most people are afraid to ask those type of questions, but you're an open book and you've always been. You have over 3 decades of service, which you have mentioned through law enforcement, and now you're going through leadership. I want to ask you because you spell your name a little different than most
Mhm.
people named Vinny. What remains your why throughout all of this? What's your motivation? And you can explain why your name is spelled different. I like
So
the way that.
thank you for that segue. My name's Vinny, spelled Vynny. So with two Y's and two N's. And the true story is because back in the late 80s and 90s, I was trying to get a personalized license plate with Vinny, but the common Vinny, Vinny, was already taken. You were only allowed 6 digits back then. And so that was the only way I could get it, and it stuck. And that's been my nickname, and I've always spelt it that way. But the Y is also something now that I use as part of my talks. Vinny with a Y, because we all have a lot of whys. We all have a lot of questions. We're all looking for certain answers. What we need are some hows, some how-tos. What we need is some insight, and we turn to different things. Sometimes we turn to a podcast that we follow that inspires us. Maybe it's a speaker that you like to watch that where you find you get answers. Maybe it's a support group. But the whys are always there. They're part of our life. And knowing how to live with the why is a big part of being successful in your life. You won't always get all the answers that you want, but for me, assisting people in finding those answers, especially when it comes to motivation and resilience, or sometimes the whys for me because of my canine expertise, I talk on that canine expertise. People love dog stories. They always have questions. What makes a police dog do this, and how do you choose them? And the other whys, let's say, that I would answer is in my last 5 years as a senior recruiter with the OPP, I became an expert on bilingual recruitment, recruiting in French and in English. And, there is a big contrast. It's not just the language that's different, the culture is different. So it's important coming from a French culture, I understand that culture. It's hard sometimes to put just someone who speaks English, who learnt French as a second language, and to throw them in a French institution. Yes, they can communicate, but they don't understand the culture behind it and the way people process and think about things. So I hope I'm answering your question as far as what the whys are. Those are the whys that I focus on that I try to help people with.
All right. Well, Vinny, I was going to talk about cash, going through the second half of this story that we are sharing with our guest. But since you brought up the canine unit, I'm going to do that before I ask you how do people reach out to you, how they get in touch with you. I know that in my mind, I thought about working undercover as a canine handler requires a great deal of courage and discipline. And I would like to know through those experiences what it has taught you with working with Cash about teamwork, trust, and like I said, you're the poster child of resilience. I
Mhm.
am a dog lover. I will tell you, all my members of my canine family are rescues, and I
Nice.
advise everyone out there to rescue an animal. Both of my members of my family were in a kill center. That means that a 8-week-year-old puppy, if it had not been adopted on the Monday that I picked up Peyton, which I named after Walter Payton, the football star from Chicago Bears. They were going to put him down, 8 weeks old, which is sad. But
That
I
is
also,
sad.
yep, I also know that I've learned more about being a better human through an animal than I have from many conversations and experience with people that are actually human. And so, as far as when it comes to trust and resilience, I think Cash probably speaks out loud. So tell me, working with Cash, what is required to create a relationship like that with a dog in a profession? Because I know professionals sometimes goes into personal space. And how did that experience with Cash teach you? And I'm repeating this: your teamwork and trust and resilience. How did that come about?
It's it's a great topic and I love talking about it. I'm obviously a dog lover also. I think I've learned so much from my police dog, and I'll touch on that. One of the biggest reasons I think that we can learn, I do a talk on leadership, the leadership lessons that I learned from my police dog. And somebody had asked me, why do you think you can learn from a dog about leadership? Because you're the leader in the relationship, you're the handler, you're the one in charge. And my first thought was the dog, their actions aren't based on what people are going to say about them. They're not worried about their reputation. They're not worried about kissing someone's butt. They're not worried about where they are on the pecking order. They just need to know where they are. So their motivation, the reason they do things is pure instinct. And when you have this relationship and the dog that loves you, it's I'd say it's out of love what they're doing. Whereas as humans, a lot of the decisions we make, especially sometimes towards leadership, is because we're shooting for something. I want to get to that level, or we're trying to get in that person's pocket, or we make decisions because we're worried about what they're going to think over there. So I'm going to make this decision because I don't want to look bad. None of that applies to dogs because those are factors that don't even come into the equation. So the relationship with the dog, and I often joke, I say, canine handler sounds very impressive, but really you're the executive officer to the dog. You're the dog's servant, because you drive the dog to where he's needed, because he's the expert. You feed them their meals, you pick up after them, you make their appointments, you drive them to their appointments, you pay their bills, you groom them. Really, if the dog ever learned how to drive a truck, I'd have been out of a position. Every canine handler would be out of a job. So thank God they can't drive. Um, the relationship with the dog starts when you start your training. It's the longest training course within our organization. It's almost 5 months, and at first it's 6 days a week, probably 12 to 15-hour days. Short of sleeping in a kennel with the dog, you're with that dog every minute. And even on the day that you're off, you're off on Sundays after a while you're still taking care of that dog. You still got to take it out throughout the day. You got to look after it. So it becomes part of your family. That dog's attached to you. But the beauty of that is while you're doing all that training, over those 5 months, there's a bonding that happens. In essence, the dog, I say, falls in love with you. You become his best friend. You're his world. Food comes from you. Water comes from you. Affection comes from you. Playtime comes from you. And these are dogs that are highly driven. They have a high hunt drive. So they love to work, they love to search, they love to go find stuff. So because they love that, and every time they get to do that, you're with them. You're bringing them to these things, to these calls. Now the dog doesn't know like this is a police call where a guy who did a home invasion ran through the cornfield. The dog, it's just a game. Oh, we're gonna go find somebody through that cornfield. Yeah, I love this game. And the dog's thinking, when I take out the harness and put it on Cash, he'd be like, oh, this is the game where we find a human. Love this game. If I find him, I either get to bite him or I get to play ball with Vinny. This is going to be great. That's what the dog's thinking. They never bite out of anger, right? Like when you send your dog in to take someone down, if there's no other option, and again, the dog becomes a use of force option, kind of like the other tools on a policeman's belt. There's different levels. You can't just let your dog bite anybody for no reason. But if you're sending in your dog, if you're justified to send your dog in to apprehend somebody, the dog doesn't know the history of this guy and he's not angry with them and he's not thinking, yeah, he deserves to be bit because he's a bad man. It's just a game to the dog. He loves chasing people. He even loves it more when you run away. He's like, yeah, run. Like, try to outrun me. You can't, but try it. The dog's like, yeah, this is even more fun. And at the end, when we catch the bad guy, officers come, usually the emergency response team officers, will come, they arrest him. Well, then Cash would turn and look at me and be like, hey, where's the ball? I found the guy, I bit him. Yay, we get to play ball. So everything for the dog is a game. So this relationship is founded on really he loves hanging out with you and you have fun together and you become like best buddies, and really you spend more time with that dog than anyone else. When I was a canine handler, I spent more time with Cash than I did with my wife Carrie, because that dog's with you and you're busy. You're called out a lot, so you work a lot of hours. So that's in essence like the relationship and the bond. And in doing that, you get to observe your dog and you see a lot of things. Simple little things that I learned, the power of the unspoken word. Everybody would say a dog communicates by barking, sure, and we talk. But there's so much that is said before you ever say a word. And it's the same thing with a dog. I remember showing up there'd been a hockey tournament and there was a team from out of town that won, and the players were outside the arena and it was getting a little, and some of the officers there knew that I was working. They're like, hey, spread out, guys, canine unit's coming. And when I pulled up with my truck, there's two little words written on it, canine unit. That was enough to dissolve the whole thing. People have seen videos on YouTube. They saw the truck, those two little words, canine unit. They never even saw the dog. I mean, I could have saved UPP a lot of money. Let's just get magnets put on cars that say canine unit, see if that works sometimes. But that diffused the situation. There's other times when I've taken Cash out of the truck and just that takes care of it. He comes out with this look and he's parting the sea. Like nobody wants to get in his way because of his demeanor, the way he walks. And I always translate that to leaders. I say, what's written on your door? Those two little words, or what's written on your email signature? Because you're saying a whole lot before people ever even see you just by what you've written down, either on an email or on your office wall. When they do see you, before you even speak, when you're walking the shop floor, what's your demeanor? Are you parting the seas, or is the message that you're showing with your presence something that's supportive and inviting? Because you're saying a whole lot before you ever open your mouth and speak to someone. So little lessons like that, stuff. The biggest one I'll share with you, because this is, like I said, I do a talk on this, but Cash taught me how to turn it off, just how to shut it down. And at the end of the day, we'd come home, no matter what the day had held, whether we were searching for hours through the bush, and it's not easy work, like we've done tracks that were like 18 to 20 kilometers through swamp looking for a missing person. The dog's tired too, not just us, but you come home, and at the end of the day, his work collar would come off. I take my vest off, I take my gun belt off, and we play ball. We play ball on the front lawn. And he would get that ball and he'd lie down, he'd be chewing it, and I'd lie down in the grass next to him. And he just had this look on his face, just happy. He was so happy to chew that ball. And it's like he was saying to me, just let it go, Vinny. Day's over. Let's just play ball. This is great. Let's just play ball. And is there anything more fun than, picture a young boy playing ball with his dog? And that's how he would make me feel. No matter what I was thinking about, and it was like, oh, okay, tomorrow we got this. In that moment, I would just like shut it down. It was so nice. And I learned that from him. And he taught me that by looking at me with this look. So, people would say, don't you wish Cash could talk? I say, that sounds like a good idea at first. But he was in the truck with me every day. He's heard me on the phone say some pretty incriminating stuff. If he could talk, he could really bury me, man. He could sue me. So I'm glad he can't talk, right? He's been privileged to too many conversations I've had. And the
Yeah,
one
so
moment I'll just, sorry, am I going too long, Kevin? Just
no,
let me
go
know.
ahead. You're fine. I don't, I'm one podcaster. Even though my show is set up for 25 to 35 minutes, I look at this show as you're an honored guest. If your story is designed to be told, and you're doing a great job telling your story, it's my responsibility to let you tell your story. Just because there's a formula for podcasters, I really don't care what other people think. If I produce and put on a great show and bring a great guest, that guest has every right to tell a story. I never want you to feel uncomfortable, so take your freaking time.
I appreciate it. I'll wrap up that part with I got to save Cash's life early in our career. And I think somehow that increased our bond also. So when you're training and the dog is learning how to track human scent, another canine handler would drive a car, park somewhere, run through bush and fields for a couple kilometers and go hide somewhere. And maybe an hour later, I would show up with my work truck with Cash and an instructor. Now, the instructor knows where the guy's gone. This is all tracked by GPS. I don't. And the instructor would say, we're looking for the person that was driving that car. So now you work your dog around and you start to use the techniques you've learned and observing your dog to see when he's found an odor. And I could always tell when Cash was in the zone. I could just see the tips of his ears because his head was right down and his tail was straight down. And just the way it was a slow and steady pull, and I knew, oh yeah, he's in the zone. I could always tell. And you start to read your dog, and that's important because as you get into your career, sometimes you're looking at your dog and you're like, okay, I know you're searching right now. You're not actually on. But when you get, imagine if somebody's been sitting somewhere for an hour, their smell permeates. It permeates in the air, and if there's a breeze, and I could always tell when we're getting close to somebody hiding because Cash's head would go up. Now he was smelling up here. And I say to the earth guys, okay, we're close. He's air scenting. Like there's a lot of odor here. If we're in the bush, sometimes you start looking up in the trees because, sometimes bad guys like to hide in the trees. And so on this particular training track, the canine handler that was playing the bad guy is hiding in this old barn shed type thing. And beside the shed was some tall grass, and there was old sheet metal there for roofing that nobody knew was there. So as Cash could smell, he's air scenting, he's pouncing, and as he pounced through that grass, one of those pieces of sheet metal cut inside his leg, cut an
Oh,
artery. He didn't even yelp, he didn't make a sound. I didn't even know till we got in the barn. The bad guy threw him the ball, and Cash was like all happy. And then I start seeing blood on the gray wood squirting out, and it's like, oh boy. So I clamped down on his leg. The vet's only about 6 minutes away in town in Gravenhurst. So my coach officer, who actually was my canine trainer also, we hop in his truck and I said, stop at my truck at the beginning. Because of my old paramedic days, I carry a very extensive first aid kit. I had IVs and all kinds of stuff that I had borrowed from the Ministry of Health. So we stop by my truck. I grab a pressure dressing, a tourniquet, apply dressing, the tourniquet, and we get to the vet. Now you got to imagine the waiting room at the vet is full of mostly seniors with their cats and Fluffy, who's waiting for her shot. And I come in my green uniform, covered in blood, with the dog in my arms, kick the door open. Hey doc, I need help now. And everybody's like, oh my, right into the back we go, and ended up staying there to help the doctor with the surgery. They tried to re-sew the artery. They couldn't, so they sewed it shut, and Cash was okay. But while we were there, the vet says, well, he's scheduled to be neutered next week. So why don't we do that now? And you can help me with that too. And I'm like, wow, there's some images that I'll take to my grave with me because I got to assist in the surgery. All this to say the next day, so Cash had to spend the night at the vet. Now we're in the bonding stage, just about week 8 of the 5-month course. He wakes up in a cage, not knowing where he is, cone on his head, paws all bandaged up, no nuts. And I walk in, hey, buddy. And I swear he looked at me with this look like, really, buddy? That's what you're going to go with? Did you see what they did to me? What I thought we were friends, right? And so I took him home and I had to nurse him. He couldn't work for a while because of the leg. And I think he, in a weird way, as I nursed him for about a week and a half before we could go back into training, I think he knew that I was there for him. And I have to say, he's been there for me throughout our whole career. That dog never let me down, always had my back. And I think that helped in our bonding. We had that special moment. And when we'd play ball, I'd see that look in his eye where he'd be like, it's okay, Vinny. It's just you and me. Let's just play ball.
I'm going to make sure that was a wonderful story. I'm going to make sure that when I do come up to see you, I don't get hurt because I see what you do to your friends when they need help.
Yeah. But I'm also very well equipped and taking care of you once you're
That
hurt.
you are. Hey, Vinny, do me a small favor because I know our listeners are curious. I know there's people out there that want to hear about your speaking and what you talk about, and we're going to cover that very soon. But I want them to know how to get in touch with you. I'll also do this at the end of the show. But
Okay.
if you can tell them how they reach you, you can if you want to share the title of the book that you are co-authoring, feel free to
Yes.
do so. So whatever it is, your speaking engagements, your phone number, whatever it is,
Easiest
go
way
ahead.
to get in touch with me is at my website, which is vinnyhick.com. Now you can see my name is written on the screen. That's how I write Vinny. But so Vinny Hick, VYNNYHICK.com. And from that website, you can see the topics I speak about. There's a sheet to get in touch with me. Everything you need to get in touch with me, or if you want to find out more about me, vinnyhick.com is the best way to do it.
And I will also put all this information in the show notes for those of you that will go to our YouTube page at RNK Productions, and you'll see this episode with Vynny Hicks. That information will be in there. So in case you missed it, I'm okay with that. You looking at it later on. So Vinny, all right. So you brought up something. This is not even part of my notes. You've seen my email. I'm just curious what my email says about me at the end. At the end of my email, I said you're only as strong as your last no. What does that say about me?
It tells me that you're someone that perseveres and that no is not the end for you. I think sometimes when we just say, if somebody says, "Do you think you can do this?" No. No is kind of final, where that's the point where maybe you give up sometimes. When you say you're only as strong as your last no, if someone said no to you, you probably push higher, above, around. You find a way to, okay, how do I'm not taking that no for an answer. But also, I think that you're not one to just easily say no. I don't think you throw in the towel very easily. And it reminds me of the saying that a chain's only as strong as its weakest link, and that
Right.
weakest link would be the last no. And you knowing that would be like, I'm gonna make sure that link is strong. This chain ain't breaking anytime soon.
Sorry. Well, to my listeners, to our new friends in Canada, to our new friends on in the UK, Austria, um, Vienna, that I've made friends with all over the world, we're talking with Mr. Vinny Hicks. He has spoken to audience across Canada. Hopefully, we'll get him invited to the United States. But I just want to kind of prep people. I want to know what your core message is and what you want people to remember after hearing you speak.
Thank you for giving me that opportunity, Kevin. There's pretty much three things I speak about. One is motivation and resilience, which is very much my personal story, part of which I shared today about losing Adam and how that changed my life. How motivation and resilience work hand in hand together, and it can be a successful combination that can change your world. I'm a living proof of that. I do speak on recruitment and retention as an expert recruiter that's traveled the country recruiting. I can tell you that techniques that I use and the strategies and the way we did business, because this was in a post-COVID environment, everything was different. The way we did business worked. Our applications started going up, our numbers were going up, and the quality of people that we were attracting was more suited for what we were looking for. So I do a talk on that. And also talk about leadership and police dogs. That talk is kind of mixed in together. I like to say it's the leadership lessons I learned from a police dog. But my goal for any of my talks is always the same, Kevin. And I say, people say, what's the takeaway? Well, I don't have a three-step program that's going to fix your life. I don't have a solution that's one size fits all, can help anyone. But what I have is real life insight, real life experience from my own storybook, which involves my career, my personal life, and my professional life, that provides the kind of insight that people want to apply to their lives because they can see and they can hear how powerful it is. And at the end of my talks, people are always left with the same takeaway. And my goal is always the same, that people will leave not only better equipped to understand themselves, but also better equipped to understand the people around them, the people close to them. And that's not just good for business, it makes the world a better place.
That's pretty good. Thank you. Guy, you've given so many, I would say gems, not nuggets. You've gone beyond just laying there in a field of streams. You've given a lot of great advice, and you're a master storyteller. I love hearing your share as to how you look on
Well,
life.
thank you.
But I also know that throughout the world, we are all trying to find our identity. You know, some are trying to rewrite history and avoid the truth and be accountable for what some of our ancestors are responsible for, even though the descendants are not liable. But the story needs to remain true. I would ask you, what advice would you give to a young professional who wants to serve, who wants to lead, but still stay true to themselves in this fast changing world that we live in today? And this is also my way of saying, you know, the difference between the stories being told from Canadians to America. And I want people to see you for you. You're just a wonderful, giving, kind person. And I'm proud to know you. And I want people to share that same feeling and not let people that are misled, that are in power, change the view that you and I see. So again, I'll
Oh,
ask the question, what advice can you give to a young professional who wants to serve, lead, and still stay true to themselves in this fast changing world that we live in?
thanks for the opportunity. I love that question because it ties right in with a saying that I use. It's a quote that I've tried to use in my life. And I think that no matter who, this could apply to anyone. It's the person, the young person who's looking to get ready to serve. Maybe it's the person that's almost serving, they're through the process. And life can be hard, things happen. And there's a line that was shared with me by a family friend years ago, and I've often repeated it and I've kind of expanded it into a quote, is that every situation that life throws at you leaves you with a choice. You can be bitter for it or you can be better for it. The choice is yours. It's easy to be better when you find out you just won $1 million. Yeah, hey, I'll be a better person. I'll even give more at church. But what about when you just found out you're about to lose your job? Or you just found out that somebody crashed a car or someone passed away? It's easy to be bitter, but you can choose to say, I don't see it. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to choose to be a better person because of this situation. Because the truth is, you can't change the situation. What happened has happened. The only thing you're in control of is how you're going to react to it. And I can tell you from my life experience that there's times in my past when I wanted to be bitter, but I chose to be better, even if I couldn't see it right away. You just one time was when I lost a job, and I was like, I can't see it right now, but I'm choosing to be a better person because of this. There will be another opportunity. There will be something better, and I'm choosing to adopt that philosophy, that mentality, that approach to it. And when I look back at my life, I'm so glad I made those choices because it's why I'm where I am today. The reason that I'm where I am today, whether it's a success that I achieved as a police officer or in life in general, were because I made that simple choice to be a better person no matter what happened in that situation. So I'd say that as my advice to anybody, not just a young person looking at entering into this profession, entering into anything. Everything life throws at you leaves you that choice, bitter or better. And I always finish with choose wisely because your choice will echo in your future. If you choose to be better, that will echo. But if you choose to be bitter and harness that bitterness, that's like putting on a rucksack of bitterness. You're like, I'm choosing to be bitter. I'm going to put on the bitterness rucksack and I'm going to carry it with me. Trust me, the consequences of that will also echo in your future.
All right. Thank you, Vinny. We've come to that time in the show when we're about to wrap up. I know our listeners probably have a million and one questions, so they can drop that in the comment section when they see this on RMK Production and Network on our YouTube page. But I'm sitting here thinking how impressed and how much I've enjoyed this conversation.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I cannot end this show without asking you this question. I have a list of 100 people and talking about their secrets to their success that I would like to put you in that honor to share your secret. But I want to ask you this one question. If you had one ask, that means it's like you've heard the story about Aladdin and the genie, rubbing the genie, and you get three wishes. But I'm going to ask you if you had one wish and that wish could come true. And the reason why I'm asking you this, because I can say this until someone corrects me. So I'm 100% certain that I am the only podcaster that has had 7 people to this day that has answered this question. And one of my listeners from around the world has answered the call to make someone's dream to come true.
Hmm.
The last one, someone donated 35 acres to Gareth Spratz. His name is Junior. He's Steve Harvey's co-host. In order for him to build a uh, healthcare facility to serve people with sickle cell. So I'm going to tell you that's how big. My first one was from France. A young lady donated $50,000 endowment to help her do something in the Bronx. She's a school teacher. The other
Wow.
6 I don't even have to mention, but I'll have Monique's Wells back on to ask for people to answer one of her dreams very soon. So, Vinny, my people that follow the show, and I will say this, I don't ask people to follow, subscribe, or comment unless you are a person with a high call to action. The people that are surrounded in my circle are people that get things done. I like when they comment. I like people that follow, but I also say reserve that space for someone that's willing to help someone else. That's just what I was taught. So give it a couple
Hmm.
seconds and think about if you had that one ask and someone could
Well,
make that.
when you compare it to like in Aladdin, like there's certain asks, you three wishes, and you can't ask to live eternally. You can't ask for having wishes forever. And you know, my initially, I didn't know that you were going to talk about that. Some of these asks were something that could actually be fulfilled. Because my first thought was that if you had one ask, and I'm thinking that would be of life, let's say, what I would ask for is more time. I've, it's every man, every person's given a time to be born and a time to die. I love life, and I feel like there's so much that I still want to accomplish. So if it was a possible way, in a hypothetical world, my ask, my wish would have been for more time. In a
Mhm.
realistic world, as a person who's just starting into this business and starting to speak here and there, um, I would just ask for opportunities. I believe that I have a message that can really help change people, that can help build people, maybe even save some people that are heading down the wrong path. And I would ask for opportunities, stages to be able to go and share that message. When I first I did some work with Corey Poirier with Blue Talks, and somebody in that group had asked me, like, "What's your goal, Vinny? How much money do you want to make?" And it caught me off guard. I was like, it's not about the money for me. Do I want to go broke doing this? No. But I have a pension. I have a good life. My goal's never been to make a certain dollar amount, nor has it been to be the next Tony Robbins. He's doing a great job being Tony. I just want to be Vynny Hick. What I want are some opportunities because I think I can help a lot of people. That's the passion. That's what drives me for it. When I can see the connection with an audience, I can see people absorbing the words and or nodding their head or a tear in their eye because you've touched their heart. That for me is priceless. That's what keeps me coming back. I describe it's like the golfer that hits the hole in one, the perfect shot. They say that's what keeps you coming back to golf. That experience is what keeps me coming back to it. So opportunity is what I would ask for.
All right, and I'm going to tell you one. I'm going to help you with the first part of your ask before you ask for opportunity. I'm going to say one. As far as time is concerned, we all have the same 60 seconds, no matter what part of the world we live in. It's what we do, and I'm going to ask you to take the time to live, and I'm going to grant you your one ask: live
Yes,
and
thank
master
you.
that time. The second part, I'm going to send it out to viewers from around the world. And I have some very powerful people that have been guests on this show and also have shared this show with some of the people in their circle. You've heard Vinny speak. All right. So you know he can talk. He has a strong message. And I'm saying when opportunity arises and you need someone in order to step in to be a real influence, to show the responsibility and resilience, I'm going to say reach out to Vynny Hicks. And Vinny, how do we get in touch with you?
VinnyHick.com, VYNNYHICK.com. That's my website. Everything you need is there.
All right. Vinny, to my listeners, we had an incredible conversation with you, Mr. Hick. And I know I said Hicks earlier. You're a true example of what courage looks like, feels like. You're a person of service and faith. I know you hadn't mentioned it, but I've talked to you off this. And you are one of those people that have a high purpose and your actions follow every word you say. Vinny, you remind us that leadership is not about the rank. It's about your responsibility and resilience and service. Remember, your challenges don't define you, they refine you. So,
Mhm.
um, where was I going to go from here? So, what I say at my shows and all the time, to grow, you must make some mistakes. To have confidence, you must address your anxiety. To forgive yourself, you must hold yourself accountable. To learn, you must unlearn some stuff. To exist, you have to show up more today than you did yesterday. I want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of Talking with Kevin and Son. Again, you can find us at RMK Productions and Network on our YouTube page. If you want to follow our guest, he is on probably LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and at Vinny Hicks. He gave you the information. I also want to thank our sponsor, The Burrow. It's a fine dining restaurant on two levels in Lancaster. It's on Lancaster Avenue. I'll give you the address, 149 East Lancaster Avenue in Downingtown, PA. Please stop in and tell them that you heard this on Talking with Kevin and Son. Say hello to JT, Keith, and if you are eating there and you go to the second level where there's fine dining, the executive chef is my youngest son, Theo McLemore. In closing, my grandfather always said, when you get to a point in life that you can help someone else out, he said it's your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. And with that said, we'll fade to black. And we're out.